Hey everybody, it's me, Sai. I couldn't resist that little reference to Tim Kane's new YouTube channel that I've been greatly inspired by. Tim Kane is awesome. If you don't know, he is one of the original developers of the first Fallout game, and yeah, he has a YouTube channel. I'll link it in the description where he shares a bunch of incredible information, wisdom, stories about his time in the games industry, as well as knowledge about like game design, game development, game dev technology. Yeah, you name it, Tim's probably done a video on it. And so I, inspired by that, kind of want to follow in his footsteps and see if there's anything interesting in my brain that I could probably share from my time in the games industry. Oh, and also for context, because you almost definitely have no idea who I am. Hi, I'm Sai Narayan. I am a programmer and technical artist. I've been in the industry for about 6 or 7 years now, and I am currently a senior engineer at one of the big game engine companies. It's one of the two you've definitely heard of. I'm not going to say which one, just because it's not particularly relevant to this video, but it's not a big secret. You can look me up on LinkedIn if you're that curious. But yes, preamble aside, let's get to the topic of this video, which is, so you've broken into the games industry. Now what? And this assumes that you've gotten a position as an entry-level artist, a programmer, a producer, what have you, and a game studio somewhere. You've gotten your foot in the door. Now what? Typically, there's a couple of ways this goes, or at least it's how it did for me and a lot of my colleagues and friends in the industry. And assuming you didn't already join a bigger studio to start with, you'll do a couple stints at some smaller indie studios. For me, I worked as a contractor for about a year for some indie studios making VR games. And this is an interesting time. I'm not going to say it was always the best time in terms of work-life balance or, just the general quality of life that I had, but it was an incredibly instructional time. It taught me a lot, and is probably the most important in terms of deciding whether or not you actually enjoy the work and whether or not you want to keep sticking around in this industry. Those first couple of years are really just an indication of whether or not you can continue to hack it, right? And so, yeah, you'll typically do a couple of years sort of bouncing around between different studios, building up just, yeah, like skills, because like right out of school, or maybe even, you may be self-taught, not that matters really, like anybody can do the job, but those first couple of years are really just coming to grips with what it means to create a game professionally and learning tools, workflows, production methodologies, things that it takes to get a game from a concept and an idea to getting it out the door and then supporting it maybe like after its launch. Especially, I think at doing that right at the start at an indie studio can be really instructional because you don't have all the layers of abstraction that one of the bigger studios might, or a bigger company might, in order to cushion you from how crushingly difficult it is to actually make video games. Yeah, it's great. We love it. Love being a game developer. But yes, after that, at this point, assuming you've kind of done that for a little bit, you'll decide whether you want to keep working on the indie side of things, or whether you want to join one of the big studios owned by the big boys. Your Blizzards, your Riots, your Microsofts, and so forth. Assuming you didn't already start there, and maybe you just did that for a couple of years, which you may have, and in which case then you'll probably just bounce around a bit in these mid to big sized game studios, building up your resume. And that'll be good, just because at some point you do want to join a bigger a bigger game studio or a bigger company, just because you want to experience sort of both sides of the games industry. You want to experience the duality of, yeah, just what it means to be an indie developer versus what it means to be a corpo, right? Sorry, that's it's kind of derogatory, but you know what I mean. Where it just what it means to be part of a larger entity that is creating video games, because they're quite different, right? And arguably, they both are suited to very different types of people and what those people want out of their lives, right? In a bigger studio, to kind of relate my own experience, like I worked as a as a technical artist at Turn 10 Studios, the people that make the Forza games, for about a couple years, and that was a pretty good time. You might end up also learning some more like homebrew kind of custom engines that are used sometimes by some of these bigger companies. Again, that's less and less nowadays with the prominence of the commercial engines. But yeah, that'll be an interesting time just for you to learn what it's like to ship a quote unquote AAA game, right? And like help in the process of developing one of those types of projects. And also understanding probably what it means to have a real work-life balance. That'll be something that might come as a shock to you, having worked possibly at an indie studio prior to that. But then, yeah, like now it's assuming it's 3 to 4 years into your time in the industry, you'll sort of hit a point where you will decide whether you want to keep staying in the games industry or maybe shift to something games adjacent or just move on to the wider tech industry. This is typically the point maybe when you're in the later half of your 20s, because you'll realize at this point the games jobs are not that lucrative, sadly, compared to what you could make with your skills somewhere else. I mean, I'll fully confess to having made this move. I moved sort of from game development itself to working on game development technology, right? Like working at one of the game engine companies, just because quite frankly, the pay is quite a bit more and the demands of the job are quite a bit less. And I'm very lazy. And also, more seriously, I also just want to work on my own projects and have mental space and creative energy to do that. And so, yeah, this is kind of that time where you'll decide, having ideally experienced both halves of the game industry and like what it means to be a game developer in an indie and a AAA space, which one suits you more. And there is no single right answer, right? Of course, like there are different things and priorities that matter to everybody, and everyone's circumstances are almost certainly unique. And so, yeah, this is where, as I said, it's where I moved to my current company, and I've been here for about 3 to 4 years now, give or take. And yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years too. Um, Definitely, it's been an interesting time in the industry so far. And yeah, I mean, it's hopefully, like, knock on wood, assuming I don't get hit by a bus tomorrow. I There's a lot more yet to go. Right now, where I'm at is doing my day job, kind of making sure that I can make rent, and then sort of grinding away at my own personal projects, which you can kind of see here in the background. That's kind of where I'm at right now, figuring out the ways to balance between the demands of my day job and also kind of grinding on my own personal creative projects. And so, yeah, that's my experience, and typically what I think will be the natural career progression and path, even honestly probably down to, okay, you get your entry level job, you kind of shop around for a couple of years, you move to a slightly bigger studio, or a bigger company, and then kind of get both of those experiences, and then you sort of have your time to decide, and then eventually probably you'll hit the point where you want to work on your own stuff and sort of reject, quote unquote, the man, and having to work for someone else and sort of be made to execute on someone else's ideas. At least that's how it's happened for me, but I have a feeling that that's actually a thing that most people experience to some degree or the other. It's just, it's a question of what compromises you're willing to make with your life and what you're comfortable with, right? And so, yeah, again, and also I don't want to claim my experience is universal, and I'd be curious to hear like from other people who are in the games industry or who are currently thinking about getting into it. What would you maybe have to share as your experience of how things have gone, or what would you like to see out of the your progression in this industry? Say you were to break in. That was all. This is all a single video. Like, it's all very stream of consciousness. So I apologize if it's not very coherent. I am not Tim Kaine. I'm not nearly as good as he is at just speaking into a camera and sounding like I am intelligent. And so, but regardless, I'm gonna try making these videos more regularly. Just try to make some short form content that I can get done with quickly, and just, yeah, feel good about having it done. And so, yeah, I hope this video was helpful. And yeah, I guess I will see you next time. Thank you.